Hi, this is the second session on our revision sheet. So we're doing sort of section 2, starting with the rounding off questions. Now, some of these questions you can check on a calculator, but I may just do some to start you off. Okay, question 1 asks us to write the final answer for these infinite decimals, and we know the different types of decimals we can have. So let's have a look at the first one. When we have an infinite decimal, we always check and see if there is a recurring pattern, a pattern that repeats itself, and write down the pattern once. So with the first one, we can see we've got 0.5 and then 2, 2, 2, 2 repeats itself. So the final answer would be 0.5, write the 2 once, I'll change my color, and because 5 isn't in the pattern, just some more space, and 2 is, the dot goes above that 2. That is saying 2 will repeat itself to infinity. Okay, so it is a recurring decimal and it's infinite. With B, let's have a look. We've got 4 point and now 563, 563, we can see a pattern. So we'll write down the 4 decimal point and then write down the numbers once that are in the pattern. We have 5, 6, and 3. We stop there, and because there is more than one number, we just do a line above all 3, and that is saying it will repeat itself over and over and over again. With the last one, let's see if there's a pattern. We've got 23, we'll get that ready, and our decimal point, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 8. I couldn't fit it on my page, but you can see on your worksheet, that's the pattern. So the pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Only write it once, and because there are quite a few numbers, the line goes above them all. So all of these decimals were rational, which is the opposite to irrational. If there was no pattern and the decimal went on forever, we'll just say the decimal is irrational and there is no pattern. Now with the next question, we have to round off. Now you may have forgotten how to do this, so I'll explain it now, and if you're still not sure, we'll do it in class. Rounding off is an extremely important skill that you'll need right up until year 12. You round off depending on what the question asks you. So the question on our worksheet says, round the following off to 3 decimal places. Okay, that's really important. So I'll write the decimals now. So let's do the first 2. With A, we are rounding off, remember, to 3 decimal places. So your first step is, if you're not sure how to do this, you count. Decimal places means numbers after the decimal point. So there's our decimal point, and now count 3 numbers after that. So we've got 1, 2, 3. And so there we go. And that is all we are going to keep. So basically, you can draw a cutoff line, which is saying we're going to get rid of any other number after the 3rd decimal place. But before we do that, we have to just check and see, this number here was a 5. If the number after, in this case, the 3rd decimal place is 5 or more, you have to round up, which means you must add a 1 to that 5. If it's 4 or less, so 4, 3, 2, 1, then you just leave it. So because this number here was a 5, we rounded off to 4.56. 5 plus 1 is 6, and we stop. Okay, so there is, before you just get rid of all the numbers, you have to do that check. Let's try this one. We've got, so count 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, cutoff line, everything else is going to disappear, but let's do our check. Is the number after this line 4 or less? We've got a 3 here, and we can see it is 4 or less, so we don't add a 1, which means we can get rid of everything, so it stays the same. So this will be 0.464, and that has been rounded off to 3 decimal places. Okay, and that's how easy it is. Now C is actually the hardest one you can possibly get when it comes to rounding off, because this one will involve more carrying. So if you can do this one, every other one will be really easy. Okay, so just remember, write that point down if you forgot it. If it's 5 or more, you have to add a 1. If it's 4 or less, you can just get rid of it and not worry. So with this one, once again, we are rounding off to 3 decimal places. So count 1, 2, and 3. And now we can do our cutoff line. But before we get rid of those 9s on this side, we've got to do a check. Is the number next to this line here, the cutoff line, which is a 9, is it 5 or more? Yes. So that means we have to add a 1 to this 9 over here. And you may notice what's going to happen. 9 plus 1 is going to be 10. Now we can't just write 10 down. It won't make sense. And this just involves your addition skills. So all we got to do is down here, I'm going to get my decimal ready. So I'll get my decimal ready underneath the same decimal. So now my decimal point is ready. And now I'll just basically add like I normally would if I'm adding 2 decimals together. So 9 plus that 1 is 10. Put the 0 down. And carry the 1. And do the same thing. 9 plus 1 is 10. So put the 0 down. And carry the 1. And then, sorry, the computer's lagging a little bit. So we'll go 9 plus 1 is 10, put the 0 down, carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10, 0 down, carry the 1. Now 8 plus 1 is 9. And there's nothing else to carry, so we stop there. And then the 3 will be the same. And that is our final answer. If you had to keep on carrying, so I'm going to add another one in. This is actually probably a bit harder. So I'll do another question. What if we had this 4.99999 and so on? All right, so we are still rounding to 3 decimal places. So let's count. We've got 1, 2, and 3. And that's going to be our cutoff line. So before we get rid of all the other 9s on this side, let's check and see. Is this number after the line 5 or more? Yes, it is. Which means we have to add a 1 to the 9 and round it off. So these can go now, but I now have to do this, 9 plus 1. Because I know I'll be getting 10, I'll get my decimal ready down here and just keep adding until I stop. 9 plus 1 is 0. 9 plus 1 is 10. Put the 0 down, carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10 again. Put the 0 down, carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. So we put the 0 down and now carry the 1 onto the 4. And then 4 plus 1 is 5. And you can see in this case, we can simply write 5. Because 4.999 is so close to 5, you end up just writing 5 down basically. But if you can do C and D, they're pretty much the hardest ones, only because we are carrying. Now with number 3, you can check most of these on the calculator, but I want to just set this one up for you, and I'll do a couple of others in case you're not sure or forgotten. Now this one here was a test question last year, and a lot of students got this wrong because they forgot how to set up their place value. Now it's important to note that yes, some of these have a decimal, but this 2 over here, which is a whole number, we can't see its decimal, but we know really 2 can be written as 2 point and then 0, 0, 0. Okay, so just remember that, and that will help us to work this out properly. Now with addition, it doesn't matter what number comes first. It can be small first or larger first, it doesn't matter. So let's start with, I'll just write it in order. We've got 10.38, first number. Next thing I do is get my decimal point ready and line it up with my other number. So now I've got 0.993. So 0, points ready, 9, and then 3. And remember, if you're messy, and find it hard to structure your work, just draw some lines. And I'll do that now for myself. So that there's my columns, and I should be nice and neat, and my answer can go down there. I forgot what color it was. All right, so next number. Now in this space here, I can add a 0, and I will, just so it doesn't look empty. All right, my next number is 203.01. Get my point ready. All right, so now I've got 3 on this side, then the 0 in the next column. Oops, sorry, I did the columns wrong. Squeeze it in. And you shouldn't rush your work, all right? So I've got 3, 0, and then 2 out there, okay? So 2's in the 100, 0's in the 10s, 3's in the 1s, and then 0.01. And if you want to, you can put a 0 there, okay? And then we've got 2, but we know the decimal point comes first, and 2 is a whole number 2, and we can just put zeros in all the spaces, okay, if you want to. And that's what you should have had. So when you add this, get your decimal ready, everything is lined up, ready to go. We've got 3 plus 0 is just 3, 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 8 is 18, put the 8 down, carry the 1, 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 plus 9 is 13, put the 3 down, carry the 1, we've got 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6, 0 plus 1 is 1, and 2 is just there. So hopefully that was the right answer, and remember, always check with your calculator. Okay, I will also do 3B, just to make sure you're okay when it comes to borrowing. Now, with this one, we are subtracting. Now, subtraction, we know we have to do a check first. Is it bigger number first or the small number? We've got 100, and then we've got 3.91, so we can see the bigger number is first, so our answer will not be negative. That's our first check. And when subtracting, the larger number must go on top. So we have 100.502 on top. If you need to draw your columns, you can, and I'll do that now. So one number in each column. Decimal can have its own column. Oop. All right. And now, so we're subtracting 3.91. Decimal point ready, and 9's on that side, and then the 1, and then 3 is on the other side. And you can't go wrong when you have columns. Okay, and now we are subtracting. In this space here, I'm going to put 0 just so it looks, not empty. And I might put some zeros here as well. Why not? It doesn't change our number. All right, so 2 take away 0. I can do that. It's just 2. Now, 0 take away 1. Be careful. It's not 1. It'll be a negative 1. So we have to now borrow. So I'll go to my next column, and there's a 5 there. So I'll borrow 1 from the 5. So that becomes a 4. And this now becomes a 10. So I'll just write 10 there so it's nice and clear. I now have 10 take away 1, and 10 take away 1 is 9. Now, 4 take away 9, I can't do that either. So I'm going to borrow from the next column. But the problem is I have 0 here. So I'll try the next column, but I have 0 as well. So I'll jump to the next column, and finally there is a 1 here. Lucky there's a 1 because I'm going to borrow that 1, and it will become 0. There's nothing there. Now, the one that I've borrowed has to go on to the next 0, which becomes a 10. And then I'm going to borrow from that 10 again, so that becomes a 9. And that next one I borrowed goes on to the next 0. So this one here becomes a 10, okay? So I'm just writing 10 so it's nice and clear for you. And then I'm going to borrow from this 10, and that becomes a 9. And then 4 becomes 14. So finally, I can subtract 14, take away 9, which will leave me with 5. Now, I should have got my decimal point ready. That should have been my first thing, but I didn't do that, sorry. And now 9 take away 3 is 6, and 9 take away 0 is just 9. And we're done. Okay, so this is pretty much the hardest one you'll get, where you have to keep borrowing. And sometimes you have to borrow and carry it on to the 0 and then keep doing it that way. But once you've done that, it's all set up for you. Okay, with our next question, we're moving on to question 6, and I want to do these ones just in case you've forgotten how to divide. All right, now we can see both of these questions we're dividing, and there's a decimal involved. So with the first one, we can actually see the division symbol, and I'm going to write it in fraction form: 0.2 divided by 647. And the reason for that is I'm going to not make a mistake, and I know 0.2 falls down and goes under that bridge. So 0.2 goes in there, and then 647 on the outside. Now the next question we're doing is question 6, just in case you've forgotten how to do these. Now remember, your other questions, just check with the calculator. And there is a lesson on multiplying decimals. Now with question 6a, there was a mistake. It should have been 0.2 divided by 6, not 647. So if you try to work that out, you can, but it may be a bit more challenging. But try this one now if you haven't done it. And so I've got my bridge ready, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to write this in fraction form. 0.2 divided by 6. So I know clearly, I'll change my color, that 0.2 will fall down and go under the bridge. Okay, so write that in fraction form. And now I'll put my 0.2 under the bridge, and my 6, I'll just squeeze it on the outside. Okay, now my next step is when we're dividing with decimals, if we have a whole number out here, then we can easily work this out. The decimal is under the bridge, and that is fine. So I'll get the decimal on top so it's lined up, and I'm going to add some zeros. Too easy. And now let's work this out. 6 into 0 can't really go. It's just 0. 6, nothing to carry. 6 into 2 doesn't work. So I have to put a 0. Be very careful. Don't forget that 0. Now, I haven't used that 2, so I'm going to carry it on to the next 0, and I get 20. So 6 into 20, I know 6 times 3 is 18, so I can fit in 3 times, but the remainder is going to be 2. 6 into 20, once again, goes in 3 times, and the remainder is going to be 2. And I can stop there because I can see what my pattern is. So my final answer will be, I can see 3 is the repeating pattern, the recurring number. So I'll have 0.0, I'll write 3 once with a dot on top. And that should have been your final answer. Okay? The next one, it's in fraction form for us. So I'll get my bridge ready. And I know 0.355 falls down and goes under the bridge. So we've got 0.35 and 5. Next step, the 5 goes on the outside. Next important step, get my decimal, line it up with the decimal underneath. And now let's do this. So 5 into 0, it doesn't work, so it's just 0. 5 into 3, it can't fit into 3, so we put 0. Don't forget that 0. We haven't used the 3 yet, so it carries on to the next number, and I now have 35. 5 into 35 fits in perfectly, because 5 times 7 is 35. So it fits in 7 times. There are no remainders, which is good. And now, last number, don't forget that 5 on the end. 5 into 5, once again, fits in perfectly. Goes in once. And this number is a finite decimal. It's not infinite, it stops. Or we can say it terminates. So we've got 0.071 as our final answer. Okay, next one. With question 7, yes, you can put these in a calculator, but I want you to show me how you worked it out or what you're thinking, okay? And we're pretty good with this now with the square roots and powers. So 7a, we've got the square root of 9. We know there's an invisible 2 out here telling us a number times itself twice to give us 9. Is there a number? Yes, there is. I know that 3 times 3 gives me 9. So the number is just going to be 3. And that's how easy it is. B, we've got 9 squared. It is not saying 9 times 2. We know this is saying 9 times 9. So I'll write down 9 times 9. And then I know that 9 times 9 is 81. Now, I forgot to mention that the question here uses a keyword that we call evaluate. I'll just write it on the bottom. That word means, see how it's sort of got value in there? Almost. No, that's a U, so evaluate. That to me means to show the value. So 9 squared is a number. We can't see it yet. We have to evaluate it or show what the number is. And the same thing with these ones. So the square root of 144, what is the number times itself twice to give us that? So once again, we've got the square root. And I know that 12 times 12 will give me 144. So I'll write that down as part of my working out. And then to the final answer, the number is 12. And we're done. D, once again, 2 to the power of 3, I'm going to write it out. It's saying 2 times 2 times 2. Not 2 times 3 is 6. Be very careful. And I know how to work this out. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So the answer is 8. Sorry that it's lagging a little bit. All right, let's try E and F. Okay, with E, we notice that instead of the square root, we now have the cube root. There's a little 3 out here. So that little 3 is telling us a number times itself 3 times to give us 27. And what can that number be? Well, if I try 2, 2 times 2 times 2, I know gives me 8, so it can't be 2. But I'm going to try maybe 3. So let's see, 3 times 3 times 3, the same number times itself 3 times. So far I'm doing the correct thing. Let's check it out. So 3 times 3 is 9. Sorry, 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 18. So, 9 times 3 is 27. And we got our number. So the answer for this is simply going to be 27. And the last one for this section, we've got 4 to the power of 3. You can work this one out. It is simply saying 4 times 4 times 4, okay? And you can work that out yourself. Okay, next question, we're nearly done. 8A tells us David obtained his test results, which show a result of 8 out of 13. What is this as a decimal? Okay, so he got, just say, could be a spelling test, he got 8 out of 13. And he wants to know what his result is as a decimal. So we can simply divide this, and that's how easy it is. So I know that 8 will fall down and go under the bridge. So I'll get my bridge ready. And then I'll put my 8 down, and I'll just add my decimal and some zeros just in case there are remainders. And my 13's on the outside. All right, so there we go. I'll just change my color now when I start working it out. Now this one, we're dealing with 13, so you can use a calculator to help you work some things out if you get stuck. First step is get our decimal ready on top. Now 13 into 8, it can't fit, so there's a 0 there. We haven't used the 8, so we're going to carry it on to the next 0. And we have 80. Now how many times can 13 fit into 80? Now if you're using your calculator, I'll bring one up. And you want to know how many times 13 goes into 80. If you do this, 13 divided by 80, you've made a mistake. That is going to give you a decimal. That doesn't make sense. Always divide the bigger number first, okay? So if I want to know how many times does 13 fit into 80, I will go 80 divided by 13 and see what it gives me. And it's telling me if it's in there, I can see a whole number 6. So I'll write down the 6 on my working out. So you do that as well. But we don't know what the number is. So what is now 6 times 13? So how close are we to 80? So I'll just change that. So if I go 13 times the 6, we're at 78. So we're quite close to 80, but I needed to know that 78 to know how many remainders will I have to carry on. So it goes in 6 times 78, there's a remainder 2. So I'll put a 2 on the next 0. Easy. Next, now 20 is a small number, so we may not be able to need to use a calculator. 13 into 20 can go, well, 13 plus 13 is 26. So it can only fit in once. So if I'm at 13, what's the remainder to get to 20? Well, it will be 7. So I now have 70 on my next step. So once again, I'm going to bring the calculator up and do the same thing. So if I just clear this, how many times can 13 fit into 70? So I'll go 70 divided by 13 to see what it gives me. It doesn't fit in perfectly, but I can see I've got 5 as a whole number, so it can fit in 5 times. So on my working out, I'll put 5 and have that ready. And now, let's see what 13 times 5 is to see how many remainders we have. 13 times 5 is 65. So we're 5 away from 70. So I'm going to add a 0, more zeros. And now I've got 50 there. So now how many times can 13 fit into 50? So do the same thing. So 50 divided by 13 can fit in 3 times. So I'll write that 3 down. And then what is 3 times 13? So I know how many remainders I have. 39. So we were almost there. So 39, that means there's a remainder of 11. So we can see this is starting to get tricky. And the pattern, I can't see a pattern yet. So now we have to say how many times does 13 go into 111. So I'm going to do the same thing now, but I'll just do it on my own calculator to save some time. So 13 fits into 110 8 times, okay? And 13 times 8 is 104. So we were 6 away. So my next 0, I'll have a 6, and I think this is the last one, so I can't fit any more. So 13 into 60, 60 divided by 13, I get 4.61, so it fits in 4 times. And I'll stop there because I know that this is the repeating pattern, 6, 1, 5, 3, 8, 4. But you do a few more and see if 6 and 1 start appearing again. So finally, the answer should be 0.615384. Okay, so I've just shown you how to use this on a calculator in case you're not sure what to do when you got larger numbers. Now with question 9, this involves a bit of BIDMAS or BODMAS. Now we work each one out separately. So for the first one, we have the cube root of 64. And I know that 4 times 4 times 4 gives me 64. So this number here just equals 4. That's done. Now plus, here I've got square root of 2 plus 14. When you see under the square root, you have to add something, or it might be subtract something. Do that first. What is 2 plus 14? 2 plus 14 is 16. So what I have now is 4 plus the square root of 16. So that's taken care of. And now, what's the square root of 16? You know there's an invisible 2. A number times itself twice to give us 16. I know 4 times 4 is 16. So the number is 4. And finally, 4 plus 4 is 8. So that should have been your final answer. This one, same approach. Do each one separately. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. We've got a plus. Now, a number times itself 3 times to give us 261. If you can't work it out, always start from low numbers. So I know 2 times 2 is 8. That won't work. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 3 times 3 times 3 times is 27. 4 times 4 times 4 won't work. But I know the number is actually 6. Okay, so you could have kept doing that until you found a number. Or calculator would help you. And then 4 plus 6 is 10. Now with this question, this will be our last question. The reason why I want to do this one is it looks different, and we haven't done any of these in class yet. We're turning this into a decimal, and we know the whole number 4 is going to be 4 and our decimal point. Okay, that's just the whole number. The decimal part is this bit here, 2 divided by 3. That's the decimal. So the 4 will just stay out there. And to turn that into a decimal, we know it's saying 2 divided by 3. So 2 will fall down and go under the bridge, and 3 on the outside. Get our decimal point ready and add some zeros. 3 into 2 can't go, so that's 0. We haven't used a 2 yet, so carry it on to the 20. 3 into 20 goes 6 times, remainder 2. 3 into 20, 6 times, remainder 2. And we know what our pattern is, what's happening. Okay, so really, we're not going to write 0.66. We're going to have 4 point, and this decimal part is just 6,666, so with a dot on top. And that should have been your final answer.